Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Pakistan EdTech Summit 2021. We had an enlightening presentation from Jay Richards Hill at the Microsoft headquarters. And she spoke about a lot of technologies from the future. And to say the least, we have learned a lot of new things today. But let's really take a step back and talk more education and less technology for this particular panel discussion. Joining us today are some of the key stakeholders relevant to the topic of adapting the curriculum for EdTech, blended learning models, and training with teachers. So very relevant people. Joining us today, we've got Ms. Rafiah Mudassir. She's an educational leader and the founder of Nurul Huda Foundation. Ms. Urooj, she's the CEO of E-Services and Technologies and the affiliate director, Destination Imagine in Pakistan. The legendary Todd, he's the CEO of CDRS, the Comprehensive Disaster Response Services. For those of you who don't know, CDRS has done a lot of work in education, and Todd is going to be sharing how they've done it. Then we've got Ms. Rubina Mumtaz, who's going to be representing the higher education side. She is from the Rawal Institute of Health Sciences. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us, and I'm going to be asking you the questions here. Starting with adapting the curriculum for EdTech. Ms. Rafiah Mudassir, who's here, I would have liked to ask her, but since I think she has a bit of some trouble with her connection, I'm going to start the question with Ms. Rubina Mumtaz. Ma'am, post-pandemic, we had to go online in terms of education. Now it's easier for primary school education. I mean, that's what it seems like. But for higher education, and especially for med school, when you talk about medical university, what were some of the challenges that you faced?
Thank you. Well, when you say what are some of the challenges, it's a really long list, because we are creating doctors and dentists. So online learning was like taking a step back into, although it's online, it's like going back to the 19th century. Other than the normal IT issues, which you've discussed in your earlier session, our issues were very much related to the skill sets that we are trying to impart to our students. It's extremely difficult to teach them about the human body, about the oral cavity, and do it just theoretical. We actually cannot give them the feel of a medical person. And the fact is that, us healthcare workers, I've been on the front line since the pandemic. I haven't taken a single day off. And our students are our second line. They're the second battalion to the frontline workers. So having put them online, we are actually doing ourselves a great disservice, because the 2 years, that's last year and this year, the graduates we're going to produce are going to be seriously, I will use the word untrained. Like I teach my class, let me give you an example. I want to teach them how to do a filling. I literally show them a YouTube video. It's like you becoming a dentist. Just see a few YouTube videos and you're a dentist. And when they do come to the college, or because we have to sort of give them the physical thing, we can't do it. We rush through it. They have no feel. So really the pandemic and the future frontline workers, you've damaged them.
Right, ma'am, that's an interesting perspective, but let's listen to ma'am Rafiah Mudassir, who's going to be talking to us. She's one of the pioneers in primary and secondary education. Ma'am, when we talk about adapting the curriculum, we also talk about the blended learning models, which is virtual or visible. Ma'am, what are some of the challenges that you face?
Well, in the beginning, everything was happening. But as we progressed through the year, we realized that students are not learning certain things and they can't be taught online. Concepts, as Ms. Rubina was just telling about the medical students, so is with the younger students. There are certain things where they need to have a hands-on experience to feel it, to know it, to understand it, to smell it, the younger ones especially. Earlier, the schools were totally closed, and then in primary also, there were a lot of limitations. For secondary students, it was expected, but the secondary students themselves, they are adolescents or pre-adolescents, so they like to interact with their peers and learn more. So it has been very, very challenging. I can quote my son here, who was frustrated and he started crying that when will the schools open? Because he wanted to go and mingle with his friends. So we have all types of learners. We have learners who are kinesthetic learners who like to experience things and learn. We have auditory learners. We have visual learners. So visually too, it has caused fatigue for the students, because that we can see the way they are now doing things. The teachers are not satisfied. The parents are not satisfied. So it has been a very challenging year. But we need now to look at the impact of the online classes, how much learning did actually take place in the class from the teacher's perspective, and then decide for the future. So teaching some of the concepts, especially mathematics, especially those things, the science topics, has been difficult. And of course, the students were typing and sending in their assignments. So the students have totally given up on the writing part. So I'm afraid that when the students go back to school, they will be as good at writing.
Right, absolutely. And that's another interesting perspective. But one of the most important parts of this panel discussion today was about training the teachers. And I decided to incorporate one of the pioneers that I know of and is recognized internationally as well now, from the Millennium Institute of Professional Development at the Millennium Education, Ma'am Ayesha Amir. Ma'am Ayesha, you have been a master trainer as well, and you've really been working on developing the ecosystem for training the trainers. What is your take on the post-pandemic scenario? How have things changed?
Thank you so very much, Anza, first of all, for inviting. And I am really happy to be here because, such discussions where we actually experience ourselves as our social life on screen. That is one thing which is very different when it comes to the training. We need to understand that word adaptability is a skill. And when it comes to the training, as Ma'am Rubina Mumtaz also said, that giving a knowledge is something else, but training a person on that knowledge to use that skill when is needed, that is something which hit very bad when it came pandemic. And in pandemic, in training room or in training hall, we don't have the learners like auditory, visual. Yes, we do have, but we focus more on, conceptualization, on thinking, on observing, on reflection. Now, what happened that in pandemic, when the content and the context, both they reduced to a sense that we do have context in terms of PowerPoint presentations and, in terms of multimedia, and in terms of other things, but the context was missing. That is one thing which hit very badly when the pandemic came. And then the human touch, that was not around, the non-verbal communication of a trainer. So when it comes to the training actually take almost a 180-degree shift. And in that shift, we need to understand that it's not about only knowledge, the knowledge which you are imparting, what an impact it will have in practical life. That was one thing which was a challenge. And secondly, just briefly, I want to bring your attention here, Anza, that the teachers and we ourselves, we were not actually ready for that transfer or that transformation or a shift. It was something which just suddenly came into our lives, and now we are online. So there were a lot of experimentation involved during that whole process. And that experimentation was never pilot. So the trainers, when it comes to the training, they were not even trained in a way how to cater the needs of the teachers and the learners and the bodies those who are involved into it. So yes, no doubt it has a strong flashback impact on training departments and training field also. But there is always an opportunity. I think there is always a learning in any kind of a crisis. With this pandemic, we actually in training we redefine the definition of adaptability. Adaptability is no more engagement now. Adaptability is no more an experiential learning, though it is, but adaptability is something which is making you fix for an immediate impact within the less time. So yes, it's a very valid point, and we have to take our things and the engagement onward. And yes, context and content is also very important, which we try to build our level best during this pandemic, and we are still working on that.
Right. Thank you, ma'am, Ayesha, and we'll speak more about that. But talking about adaptability and, working in a disaster-stricken area, and with the pandemic, it just came where we, least expected it to happen. And we know someone that has been working, under pressure and in such situations, in really mitigating the losses of disasters. Todd, I know that you've worked a lot in disaster-stricken areas, and with the pandemic as well, there's a lot of rebuilding that you have been doing in the local communities. However, I want to point towards the education side of things. So what happened when it's fine, in privileged areas and in the urban areas, we still had schools, physical schools that moved online because they could invest into, let's say, licenses for softwares. But what actually happened in the rural areas or the Mehrabadi, Kachhiabadi areas?
Well, most of the schools in the areas that we work in have shut down. They don't have online facilities. Either they're very poor schools in very poor areas, they're government schools who don't have such facilities. My team, we do disaster relief. Like in the last year, we have our over 500 water projects, and we've been feeding a lot of people thanks to the Association of Physicians of Pakistani Descent of North America, APNA. So we've been concentrating on these things, but in particular, when it comes to education, we have, and of course, I myself barely got out of high school. I'm not an educationist. The wonderful ladies here on this forum, this panel, are quite accomplished and far more, speaking about this subject, they're far more qualified than me. But the one thing that my organization has done that's really, really great is back in 13 and 14, we established CDRS Youth. And the youth chapters, particularly in the big cities of Karachi, they would go to and still go to rural schools where a lot of the unfortunate situation, as many of you will know, the teachers there teach memorization, and they don't really teach analytical skills and questioning, and they just say, memorize this and learn this. So that's unfortunately what happens in a lot of the schools that we've seen in places like rural Azad Kashmir, Swat, and places like interior Sindh and Balochistan. So what the students that I had did, they were all software engineer students and have since graduated and are now in the field of software engineering, very intelligent, wonderful kids. And they would go to schools and they would teach some of the things that they weren't getting, the kids weren't getting, like how to use a computer and how to, what happens inside a computer. They would tear a computer apart and put it back together in front of the kids. And the kids would be like, so amazed, and they would ask, why is this way? And why is that way? So what we were able to do is go into schools that didn't really have this available. And with our university students, we're able to, who are very committed, very genuine for Pakistan and for doing this education and humanitarian work. And they're brilliant kids, far more brilliant than I could ever be. And it's just been a privilege and an honor for me to work with them, because I've seen actually how it works and how it changes lives on the ground and helps these kids open up their minds to learning how to question how things work, why it works that way. Why is 2 + 2 4, not just memorizing it. So that's the thing that my youth team has been able to do with our program called Each One Teach One. And it's a very informal thing. They go to a school in a slum area or in a rural area, and they sit down with the kids and they just impart their knowledge, their leadership, mentoring. And they also try to help the teachers there maybe understand that not just memorization skills is a good thing to try to open up the kids' minds with. So I do feel like we've made an impact in that regard.
Right, absolutely, Todd, and it's very important just in conversation with Jay Richards Hill at Microsoft, and one of the 21st century future-ready skills is analytical learning, and a big part of that has to do with STEM education. And luckily, we've got Ms. Urooj Semeen joining us. Ms. Urooj, please elaborate a little more about the need for STEM education in this new age of blended learning models and EdTech.
So STEM education is something that that is not just a need for this, like for now, it has been here forever. STEM has now become some kind of a buzzword. So that's why each and every school is like, yeah, now we want to adapt this thing, and but this is something that we have been doing forever. The need of science, technology, engineering, especially research and arts and mathematics in the early years is really, really important. I was, when I was hearing Miss Rubina and Miss Ayesha, and they were talking about the pandemic when it hit it, and we were, everything just went online, and it became really difficult for all the teachers to just include everything learning over here. So what I thought at that time was that we were not ready. We as teachers, parents, we as an educator were not ready for this thing. And what we are trying to do over here, we are trying to build future learners. And we don't know that in which kind of job these learners are going to land. So we were not ready for this kind of pandemic, and we are trying to build the youth who is going to land in some kind of a job that they don't know about. So how are we going to prepare these students for the 21st century if we were not ready for something like that? So what we need right now is that the focus of STEM should be on teachers, but the focus of STEM should be on the parents and on the trainers as well, because we have so many parents on board. They are over there, they are in the houses, they want to support their kids, but they don't know anything about it. The teachers are there online, they do online learning, they provide training, they provide everything, but they cannot go to each and every student's house to support them. So what we need is that we need to train these parents as well. They need to know what STEM is all about, because many parents are actually afraid of the word STEM. When you say, yeah, your child would be learning about STEM. So they are actually afraid that what they're learning, they don't even know about it. So it's not something out of the world. It is something that we have been doing all along. And I think that it is high time that our parents should know about all of this.
Right. It's a very interesting perspective, ma'am, Urooj, and we'll hear more about it. But one of the key areas that got affected was not just the blended learning models, but also testing and exams. Let's start with ma'am Rubina. You spoke about medical school, and the reason for putting you on the panel was that fine, when you're teaching someone about, let's say, BBA or accountancy, you can still take education online and be okay with it. But with med school, a large part of it has to do with your vivas and your practicals and everything. How did you, work under such circumstances? How did testing and progression of the students happen? Yeah, I think Ms. Rubina is.
All right.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, I'm back now. Basically, we had a real issue with this. We had the written exam could have been because some papers are simply MCQs, so we could have them do that online. But then paper 2s are with short essay questions, so they had to come in person. And then we have the third part, which is known as OSPEs and OSCEs, basically practical examination and clinical examination. And for that, they had to come to the hospital, and we had to arrange them to see the patients, and we had to arrange all the SOPs. And for preparation of the OSPEs, the students would come about a week or two earlier, and they do a crash course in the clinical skills that they had to learn. And then within a week of that crash course, we are testing them. So obviously, we were lenient. We had to be lenient, at least in the OSCE part. But in the long run, the detriment is to the students. And I think now with this vaccination coming in, we hopefully will be open, even if there's like a fourth
what
wave.
is the contingency? What is the contingency plan? So God forbid, the virus mutates and we have a similar situation. Aren't we making future doctors suffer at this point in time? Or are we going to reduce the quality of doctors?
You see, for the contingency plan, the biggest issue that I have as a professional is that they lump medical and dental students along with all the other students, primary school, business school, secondary school, everyone is together with medical school, which I think is not the right thing to do. So the contingency plan, I have none right now, but as a professional, we can just propose to the policymakers, and the proposal should be that all students will be vaccinated and will carry the risk of being frontline workers. So although there'll be students, they will have to come get that skill set, just like the rest of us. We've been frontline workers. We were not vaccinated and we were frontline workers. And when we talk about the pandemic, it's funny that because of COVID, everyone is educated about COVID. But as a dentist, it was a normal routine thing to be vaccinated against hepatitis B. Every person, even the sweeper in the hospital is vaccinated against hepatitis B. Students are not allowed clinicals without Hep B vaccination. And that was a given and a norm. So I think with the COVID vaccination, that's going to be another norm. And hopefully pandemics come and go. Our students will still be in the hospitals learning something that will benefit when they graduate, they'll benefit, they'll justify their title doctor.
Yeah, that's quite encouraging to hear. And I know Raval Institute of Health Sciences has been at the forefront for a lot of innovation. And Rafiah, when we talk about, the blended learning models and EdTech, and a lot of school owners are different from the school management. So maybe your role as school leadership, or let's say the frontliners of education, there were a lot of new changes that had to happen and that are still happening, because when technology is fast progressing, there's a lot of investments that need to be made. So for instance, buying new laptops or PCs for teachers or students and so on and so forth. How do you convince the school owners or management to sort of spend money in this regard?
We actually did a conference in December where I had 100 head teachers attending that conference. And that is what we were talking about, how to cope up with this challenge. So these were their concerns, that how to invest. Some of them, the smaller schools actually closed down. I'm from Karachi, and I know there are many smaller schools in different towns that closed down because of the pressure that they had to invest and open the school or keep the learning going. I think by now, all schools have realized that if they have to continue the teaching and learning process, they have to have a lab. And convincing parents was also an issue. You see, if there are 3 children in a house, each student needed a device to be connected to school, even if the school was running the program. So the challenge for the school owners and the heads of schools was way too big for them. And gradually and slowly, they convinced, for those parents who didn't have a device, at times the schools were sending out the worksheets or work, parents were collecting work. So they had to cater to the parent community also. And at times in certain schools, they allowed students to come and use the facility, following SOPs whenever the schools opened. And convincing, I think now everyone is convinced that we can't do without technology, and this is the future. And we have to keep this blended model going. We cannot go back to the past normal, which is not normal anymore. We will need to continue the blended learning model and the online learning, teaching and learning. So the schools have to invest. And as it is, you see, since the schools are closed, their operational costs have cut down. So the schools are actually investing. The ones that I know, they have invested in the new equipment, new labs, and even facilitating the teachers, because even there are teachers coming from different social strata, so they may not be able to afford. So this time the teachers actually also invested their savings in buying a laptop, buying a device, buying a camera. So it has been challenging and it has been tough for everyone. And I think the sector that has suffered the most in this time is the education sector.
Right. Thank you so much for that opinion. Ma'am Ayesha, since, Ms. Rafiah Mudassir did point towards something that was very relevant, multiple devices, purchasing new devices. It also is noteworthy that we had to, and I've seen you do it, train the teachers on using these new tools and devices and everything. What were some of the tools that you use or the techniques that you use? How difficult was it?
Okay, Anza, previously we used to have this term transdisciplinary education. We usually talk, I was hearing you a few talks in the morning, and the esteemed panelists and to the speakers, they were talking about, transdisciplinary teaching. But now I am of the view that after COVID, because now as Ms. Rubina and ma'am from another esteemed panelist, they also shared that technology is no more option now. It's must. And in post-COVID, we all know that life is not same. And this is the new trend and the life which will be faced forever. So when it comes to the training, it is no more transdisciplinary teaching anymore. It is the transdisciplinary training also. Now in the trainings, when we have a less social contact, we have a less emotional interaction face-to-face, then now wherever we get an opportunity, either it's a training opportunity, or it's a discussion forum, or it's a PD cafe, there has to be a talk where the technology is cut and edge for everyone, because now the way of the learning, they are actually very different. Though I also believe that technology, no doubt, as you said, the tools and these all things, they added a lot of value in teachers and ours life. We need to understand, and Anza, if we just reflect, because when we talk about training, reflection is one of a very important aspect. If we reflect from where we started, and you yourself can now, judge yourself that where you are today. It's that practice which we never had. So this pandemic actually gave, this gave us a chance to practice what we learned about technology previously. As ma'am said that the STEM is nothing new. It is now into this popularity. Why? Because the people, they now believe that the future is of technology. Till the time you don't believe, you can't really act and you can't really apply that thing.
Then how receptive were teachers? Because imagine a math teacher for primary section who thinks she's the pioneer at her field, and she says that, yes, I know everything about math.
It's a beautiful question. It's a beautiful question, because the problem is here that the immigrants of technology is now dealing in COVID when everything is online with natives, and the teachers, they were also struggling with what they are doing. But believe you me, during this pandemic, we were just collating data, almost more than 2,000 teachers, my department trained in that 1.5 years. And the result is amazing. I must appreciate actually, Anza, this is how, when you are into the exploration phase, you start enjoying what you don't know before. The Urdu teachers, I want to appreciate Ma'am Rafiah, I'm sure will agree with me, the experience she had in her school. Urdu language teachers, the way they interacted those tools. And what tools were simple? It's a Nearpod, it's Kahoot, then it's MS Team, the Zoom itself where we are sitting right now today, the Zoom from where it is started. And see now the feedback. There was when the pandemic started, there was a tab of the feedback which used to came up on the Zoom, which is not now. And from the feedback, they improvised so much that these tools are now so user friendly that I think we are as equally proficient as the learners are. But yes, we need to understand that this in this rapid change world, it's no more every child matter for me. That's for me. Usually अपनी trainings में now I start saying that teachers, you need to understand it's not every child matter. Now it's a continuous education which matters, because the break which is now our learners faced is of year, and the learning losses which we can't predict right now, as Dr. Saiba said, that you can't, you can be a dentist from YouTube, and the learning losses and the gaps, how we will fill. here comes the part of the training and
Right.
where I feel there is a lot of responsibility on education sector.
Right. Speaking about curtailing losses, we know that Todd was involved in a similar project where not just speaking in terms of the pandemic, but whenever disaster strikes, and especially those areas where access is a problem. Todd, how does education continue under such circumstances where, let's say, there are power cuts and there's no internet? How does one connect to education? Does that mean that education and schooling has to suffer?
Well, in these areas, they're already, so little resources as it is. It hurts that they can't get online, but even without the pandemic, a lot of the schools and a lot of the very remote areas that I work in, they aren't as affected by the pandemic, because a lot of them did get shut down. But when it comes to some of the challenges that are faced by universities that have to go online, that had a lot of resources and had a very vibrant curriculum and student life and campus life, that's not the same thing in these remote areas. So a lot of things don't really change in these areas. They're already very poorly resourced, and they remain so when these things hit. So it's kind of the reality of the situation.
Right. Thank you for that opinion. Moving on, Urooj, we know that, right, STEM is the need of the hour, but are we, especially in Pakistan, developing cost-effective solutions for disseminating this knowledge? Because I know some of these expensive licenses are only a privilege that would probably be available to posh public schools.
The thing is, again, the thing is that when we talk about STEM education, we think that it is necessary that each and everyone should have a computer or a robotic kit or something very technical should be there, so that the students are going to learn about STEM, or it's all about coding. So coding, technology, it's a very small part of STEM education. STEM is actually blend of each and everything. So you don't need, if you have a robot, if you have a computer with you, then it's fine, it's very good. But if you don't have it, there are other resources available that you can utilize, and you don't have to pay a lot of money for that, and you can build something out of it. I have seen a lot of students, like I work with international organization, and I work with students who are privileged, who are not so privileged as well. And both of these students, when you provide them with different kind of projects, especially in project-based learning, these students come up with these amazing ideas with just a little material. And the material that I'm talking about is just simply you can find in your home. Pop sticks, straws, things like that. And when you give these kind of things in these kids' hands, they come up with amazing ideas and build something out of it. Right now, we will learn. I just want to point out something that right now we launched a program called ImagineX. And in that program, all the underprivileged students were asked to participate in it, and they represented Pakistan on an international scale. We had 15 teams from Pakistan and all from the underprivileged schools. And all of these students participated online. They had a little mobile phone in which they made their videos. We just provided them with a box of this material. It was all recycled material, and we provided them with just one project. They don't have to have a computer. They don't have to have a robot. But some of these students come up with these amazing ideas. They build a robot out of pop sticks, rubber bands, and straws. So you don't need hi-fi material to teach STEM. It can be done with literally everything. It's about your resources, what resources you have, and how you are going to solve a problem with these resources. What we need to teach the students, teacher, parents, everybody right now is that as a Pakistani, we have very limited resources, right? So how are we going to face the challenges? How are we going to solve these challenges with our limited resource? This has to be done at a smaller scale, like from a very beginning. From the preschool, we have to teach the students about that. So that's why when we teach STEM, when we provide this the projects to the student, we don't talk about hi-fi material, we don't talk about robots and stuff. We talk about, okay, you have this limited material, come up with an idea with this limited material and give me a solution. When you teach and train the teachers and the student in that way, you don't need hi-fi material for that. So it does not have to be expensive. It can be as expensive and as cheap as you want.
Right. Thank you. And that's a very, very effective point to be making. Now, the interesting thing to note, ladies and gentlemen, that we took a very diversified panel today because, it was of utmost importance to make everybody realize, and even these key stakeholders that are sitting with us, how important collaboration is. Unfortunately, we're running out of time for the panel discussion for today, but thank you so much for joining us. And towards the end, I'm going to take some closing remarks from all of you, starting with Ma'am Rafiah Mudassir.
Yes, I just wanted to add to what Ayesha was saying, and then Todd. I think we also need to actually look at what are the other things that the children learned. While online, we know kya limitations, see what happened, what we could not manage. But there were certain other things and skills that the children were learning at home. They learned how to communicate. They learned how to resolve conflicts within the family. They were helping their mothers and fathers in household chores or other things. So there are other skills that the children developed which are equally important, and we need to take account of that. Another thing is that we also need to measure the impact of the year that has just gone, because we are still actually arguing about it, whether the exam should take place or not take place. And we need to talk about formative assessment more now, because this situation where everyone is worried about when the exams are going to happen. Why do we actually need exams? We want to measure our children's learning and development. So why can't it be formative? Why the formal exams is such a big issue that everywhere the students are protesting, the teachers are worried, the other things are happening. And last thing is about equity. You see, we are talking about the privileged schools in the cities. And as Todd was mentioning that they don't have resources, some students cannot get online. Many of the government schools are closed. Very few are using the radio programs or the TV programs that the government has started. So we need to start thinking about the equity factor also, that are we reaching out to all our students, all our children across Pakistan or not? And we are not, sadly, we are not.
Absolutely. So this is one of the challenges that we will be addressing throughout the Pakistan EdTech Summit. Thank you, Ma'am Rafiah, for your comments. Some very thought-provoking ideas, and I'm going to root them at Ma'am Rubina. Please enlighten us with your ending thoughts. Your mute, the mic is on mute. The mic is on mute.
I always forget to do that. As an ending, I would say that I really agree with them, Ayesha, Amir, who said that, this has been a very steep learning curve for all of us. We were all thrown deep end into this technology. And we, the trainers, the teachers, were also learning with the students. And in a way, I think this should be an opportunity for us to open education opportunities, perhaps for, women girls who are not allowed for gender reasons, not allowed education, not allowed to leave the house. So online education can become a door for such people. And I think we should take this as an opportunity to create something for a population that otherwise would not reach, get this education. You know what I mean? I had to go to US to get an education. I would have loved if I could have sat at home and gotten that. So something like that. We need to make it positive. See the glass half full instead of half empty. We've suffered 2 years of our 2 years of this education system. Those students who have suffered. But let that suffering be for something maybe beneficial for the coming generations. I think that's how I'd look at it, although not for medical and dental. For medical and dental, they'll still go on the campus.
All right, ma'am, we appreciate the opinion. Ma'am Urooj, if you could kindly just sum it up and keep it a bit short.
I agree with Ms. Rubina and Ms. Rafiah on all of the things that they have pointed. One thing that I would like to add is that as a human being, we are curious and we are learning all the time. So it does not, we should not see that we have lost a lot in these past 2 years, but we should see that what we have learned throughout these past 2 years. The kids might not be as academically learned as as they should be, but they have learned a lot of other skills, and this is it's all about. They have learned how to tackle with some stuff if some kind of this kind of a problem would
Thank you, ma'am.
come in front of them. So that
Thank
is the thing that I would like to close.
Thank you. Points well made. Ma'am Ayesha, Amir.
Anza, I'll not take up much time. Just in 30 seconds, I really want to say thank you to each one of you because these such discussions are really important. One thing which I just want to conclude, that technology is giving us a competitive edge when it comes to the training. And the training is no more of training of a one person. It is also a self-reflection now. It is also training of a parent, training of a learner, training of a teacher, training of every stakeholder. That is one challenge which comes, when it comes to the training, especially in post-pandemic. And the last thing which I really want to, share through your platform is that we need to address well-being also. With all these dynamics and all these different aspects, I think we are missing on one thing, which is well-being. And what I'm seeing from a trainer's perspective in future, that we are definitely going to hit a huge impact on well-being in coming years. So thank you so very much for your invite.
Thank you. You've raised a very important point. So mental health and well-being, very important. Todd, save the best for the last.
Well, I don't know about that. It's been a real pleasure to hear these wonderful educators talk about these issues. And it was good to see Dr. Rubina again after a long time. She did a wonderful job bringing dental students and dental doctors to the disaster zone after the earthquake. So in these disasters, we were able to get resources from UNICEF, like these schools in a box that have everything that you'd want, from paints and chalk to coloring books to posters and education aids and things for the teachers, games for the students. It was really cool. And I think that even non-disaster time, a lot of these kinds of products, this kind of school in a box idea, a lot of these schools that I go to in very poor and very remote areas, they don't even have that, even non-disaster time. So I'd like to see more of those things be sent in by the government to these very neglected areas. I'd also love to see the government and other stakeholders in society bring the internet and more online ability to connect with the rest of the world for students in very remote areas. They could really use it. I feel for Dr. Rubina. I can't imagine how a medical student or dental student could possibly, they have to be hands-on and they have to be in that environment with the things and the teacher right there to learn properly. But as far as the primary students and these kinds of things, I think that really we have to double up on the online learning in these areas, and maybe have, as technology advances and it gets cheaper and easier, it should be everywhere in Pakistan. It could really benefit. And the other thing is that, unfortunately, these very remote areas, I see a lot of, especially girls, but even both boys and girls, the parents are working the farm or working the land. And after primary age, the parents often take the kids out of school because they see more value in them working in the field than going onward to be educated. And I think that's a very sad thing, because I haven't met more brilliant kids around the world anywhere I've been than Pakistan. And it's a shame when they're not able to take advantage of the brain God gave them by being able to further their education just because of poverty.
Right. Absolutely. And Todd, you really struck a chord with all of us with that beautiful message. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. It's been very, very engaging. It's been very immersive in terms of depth of knowledge and your expertise. And one thing that I, as a student, not as an expert, have learned is that education in itself is not a destination, but a journey. So no matter what happens, let's all continue to learn, evolve, and stay on foot and be equipped. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so very much, Anza.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. For
Thank
those
you
of you
so
who are
much.
watching us, please keep us updated with your comments and feedback. And if you want to learn more about the kind of panelists that we have, what they're doing, what roles they've been engaged in, we've shared some links in the description, and do get in touch, or you could approach us directly. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for another exciting case study in the next session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.